Right, y'all. Let's get into this. This is this is going to be a different kind of journey. Psalms is not a book that's like the books that come before it. Psalms is not a linear narrative of this is what's happened. I've got a decent amount of material here tonight that we're going to go through, but I'm not going to approach tonight's lesson the same as I would if I were going to be here consecutive Wednesdays in a row. Psalms exists if you've never looked at it as an entire book. It has a definite introduction. There are 5 books within it, and then there's a conclusion. Okay. These are things that I learned as I began looking at this. You can divide the book up naturally into these divisions. So that's what I'll be seeking to do. I don't know if it will be book 1 week, 2 the next, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just whatever the case. Tonight we'll only be looking at an introduction to the book. So how is it broken up? What's the history of the book? We'll be answering a lot of questions about the book. This is kind of going to be a little bit interactive for some time until we get to our actual introduction. So to get familiarized with the book, I'm going to ask you guys some questions. If you have a guess, say it. If you know it, say it. So what does the word psalm mean? And does anybody know what the word psalm means? It means praises, or the book of praises. When would you say that in Ponder's church we praise? When is that? When do we do that? At what point is it natural to praise? In singing, in singing. So this is a book of songs. It's a book of songs, and it's literally been used in different pieces. We'll get to more of this later, but as a hymn book, these are songs that were literally sang. Okay. It's a hymn book. It's a collection. This is like kind of like a greatest hit type scenario. Now, that's not really the right way to look at it, but it doesn't come from one time in history. It doesn't come from one person. It was compiled at one time. We'll get to when in a moment, but it was compiled as a way for Israel to once again, as so many of these other books that we've just studied, they begin and everybody wants to have a look at the past to know what we need to do now. This is also one of those things where it's compiled for us to look back at what's gone on. So it's a collection of 150 Psalms. Who wrote them? Does anybody know any people who wrote some of these? David, how many? Guess out of 150? 73. 73 are David's. Okay. A man named Asaph wrote 12. The sons of Korah wrote 10. Solomon wrote 2. Moses wrote 1. A man called Heman wrote 1. And Ethan wrote another. And that leaves another 50 that are anonymous. We just don't know who wrote them. There are some guesses, but it's not for certain. So we won't make any guesses. Knowing that Moses wrote one, that would be the earliest recorded in the collection, because we know he lived sometime around 1400, 1300 BC. Okay. And the latest one, that was Psalm 90, by the way, that's Psalm 90 with Moses's. Psalm 126 is written somewhere around 500 to 400 BC. So there's approximately 1,000 years covered in the selection or in the collection. Like I said, it's not a linear story or a narrative. It's 1,000 years of collected history compiled into this book. Random general questions here. What's the longest book in the Bible? The longest, biggest book in the Bible. Psalms. Is there, Jeremiah has more words. Good call. Good call. So what would this one be? The number of chapters. Okay. Yeah, I recall that now. I do. All right. What's the most quoted book of the Bible? Psalms. Yeah. The answers are going to be kind of obvious here for a moment. Of all the 1,189 chapters in the Bible, which chapter is in the middle of the Bible? One 117. 117. Psalm 117. All right. What's the shortest chapter in the Bible? It is 17. Psalm 117 is the shortest. This is what it says. It says, "Oh, praise the Lord, all ye nations. Praise him, all ye people." That's verse 1. Verse 2, "For his merciful kindness is great towards us, and the truth of the Lord endureth forever. Praise ye the Lord." Okay, that's Psalm 117, the entire chapter, verses 1 and 2. That's the shortest one. What's the longest chapter in all of the Bible? 119. Would you care to read it for us, Kirsten? I'm kidding. We're not going to read Psalm 119. All right. So there's my point in bringing out these things. There's a lot going on in the book of Psalms. There's tons of just good gospel praise. The various authors lifting up the name of the Lord. There's a lot of lament. Does anybody know what lament is? What's that mean, Kirsten? Yeah, good. Good answer. There's a book of the Bible that's got a lot of lament in it. Does anybody know what it's called? Lamentations and Psalms too. Yeah, Lamentations. All right. So that's kind of the trivia portion of what Psalms is. Now, as I said before, the book's organized into 5 different sections, and they're the Hebrew ancestors of old literally called them books. There's 5 books in the Psalms. Chapter 1 and 2 are the introduction. Okay, they're the introduction because those are 2 of the books that are anonymous. David picks up in chapter 3. We have a ton of David right there in a row, all the way to from chapter 3 to chapter 41. That's all David. Okay. Then we move into book number 2. I'm not going to list out all the authors again. Book number 2 goes from 42 to 72, and then 3, 73 through 89. And then book 4, 90 through 106, and book 5, 107 to 45. And then 46 to 150 is the conclusions, which are the hallelujah chapters. There's 5 chapters there at the end that just give this great praise to the Lord. But really, the only thing that we're going to do this week is we're going to look at these first 2 chapters. That's the introduction to the rest of the book. And we're going to kind of see why these 2 books are here as an introduction. They point specifically at, I don't want to reveal it just yet, but they are very pointed in who they're talking to. Okay. So I'm going to read chapter 1, and then I've got just a few things to say about it. Then we'll read chapter 2, and we'll say a few things about it, and then we'll draw some conclusions. Okay. So Psalms chapter 1 says this. In my Bible, there's a title. It says, "The Way of the Righteous and the End of the Ungodly." Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord. And in his law he meditates day and night. He shall be planted like a tree planted, he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that brings forth its fruit in its season, whose leaf also shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind drives away. Therefore, the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. So, two different groups of people here. What are the two groups? What's the first word we see? Blessed is the man. Okay, so we've got the blessed. Okay. What's the other group that we see? The ungodly, the blessed and the ungodly, or the way of the righteous and the end of the ungodly. Okay. Both of these groups are identified by specific attributes. We're going to start with the blessed man. And when I say man, I don't mean male, I mean man. Okay. First, they have no place with the ungodly. And that's stretched out into two qualifiers there. It says they don't stand in sin or sit in scorn. Okay. What does that mean to us? We have no place with the ungodly. We don't stand in sin or sit in scorn. What does one do when they stand? They don't leave. What does one do when they sit? Again, they don't leave. Okay. Do we fall into sin at times? But as God's people, what do? We turn from it. Okay. We turn from it. Okay. This blessed man has no place with the ungodly. We don't stand in sin. We don't sit in scorn. They delight in the law of the Lord. What is the law of the Lord? Torah. Okay, that's what we would be talking about here. This man delights in the law of the Lord, the first 5 books of the Bible. Okay. And it says, and he meditates on it day and night. What does that mean to us? Does anybody have a job in here? Yeah, everybody's got a job. What does it mean for us to meditate on the law of the Lord day and night? We have the revealed word of the Lord. We have more than the law. We have many more books to meditate on. How do we accomplish this task to be this blessed man? How do you meditate on the law of the Lord day and night? Well, it's like Paul says, I'm continually in prayer. I'm in prayer continuously. Does that mean Paul is down on his knees 24/7 praying? How does he accomplish this? As he moves through his day, he's continually seeing the obstacles and things in front of him, and he's calling back to the scriptures. He's calling back to the law. He's judging his potential acts on whether he should or should not do something by the law, making sure that the way that we walk is holy and righteous and not standing in sin or sitting in scorn. Okay. That's the blessed man. Then there's this picture that we see. It says he's likened to a tree planted by a river. Before we go any further, let's just describe a tree planted by itself out in the middle of a field and a tree planted by a river. Which one's going to produce more fruit? The one by the river. Why is that? Yeah, it's always got water. And the roots are drawing water from underground. So how is it that the blessed man is likened to a tree planted by a river? Where does the blessed man draw from? Okay. God is the river. We are the tree. Okay. I want to actually point to a specific word in here too. It's the word planted. How many trees plant themselves? The trees don't plant themselves. Sometimes they sprout up places, but this says the word planted. The blessed man is like a tree planted by a river. Who does the planting? God does. Okay. God is the source of our growth. He is the reason that we're planted near the river to draw the water. It is Him. It's now, what does this tree planted by the river do? It says it brings forth fruit in season, and it says his leaves not withering, and whatever he does is prosperous, or whatever he does prospers. Okay, that's just more words to show us what the blessed man meditating on the law, loving the Lord is like this tree planted by the source of water, who is always green, giving forth fruit in the right season, and everything that comes from the tree prospers. That is what the blessed man is like. Okay, what brings the blessing? God brings the blessing. How do we know that we're in the blessing? We love the law of the Lord. Do you know any Christians that hate the law of the Lord? If they do, they're not Christians. We love the law because what does the law do for us? When we see the law, when we see the 10 commandments and the rest of the law, when we look at Jesus's commandments that he gives, love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. What does the law do for us? It shows us, it's a mirror. It shows us where we fail. So if we didn't have the law, how would we know if we're failing or succeeding? We wouldn't. The law is necessary to point out our flaws. So we love the law because it shows our great need for Jesus. It shows our great need for a God who loves us and saves us. The law is necessary, and we love the law. Okay, now the ungodly, the second half of chapter 1. The first thing said about the ungodly is, quote, they are not so. Those are the very next words that come along. It says, the ungodly are not so, comma. What does that mean? Everything that the godly man is like that we just spoke of, the ungodly are not so. What does the ungodly man consider about the law? Love it or hate it? The ungodly man hates the law. The ungodly man does not love the Lord. The ungodly man is a tree planted in a desert. Okay, the ungodly man is not so. The ungodly man does not prosper. They are unlike the blessed man. No love for the law, no meditating on it, and they do stand in sin, and they do sit in scorn. They are like chaff that is blown away by the wind. We've studied this picture before. What is chaff? Where is chaff produced when you harvest wheat? Yeah. If I have a handful of raw wheat and I toss it up from a basket, the wheat falls. What happens to the chaff? It does, and the wind just blows it away. Out of out of this grain of wheat, when we get down to only wheat and the chaff is gone, what do we have in the basket? What's valuable? What's of use? These ungodly are likened to, not like a tree planted by the river, like the chaff that's blown away, not useful, not of any value. They will not be approved in judgment. Let's go back and look at this. Verse 5, it says, therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment. It's kind of a strange way if you just rush through it to see, but the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment. What does that say about the godly or the blessed man? That we will stand through the judgment. Why? Can you stand on your own power against God's judgment? No, we can't, right? How is it that we stand then? We stand because of Jesus. Remember when we were studying the book that used to be laying up here, that book, Knowing God, and we looked at the wrath of God? We talked about how that wrath would be poured out. That wrath is poured on the ungodly. So right here, God tells us they will not stand. They will be broken. When he pours out his wrath, they will not stand. Then it says, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteousness. Okay? They will be separated. The righteous man, the blessed man, and the ungodly at some point will be separated. Okay? Blessed man over here and ungodly man over here. They will not be approved at the judgment, and they will not join the congregation of the righteous. And one day they will perish. That is the unfortunate news, that one day they will perish. So chapter 1 points to two types of people. Okay? Two types of people. Let's see what chapter 2 points us to. I'll read chapter 2 as well. It says, starting here in verse number 1, it says, why do the nations rage and the people plot a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bonds in pieces and cast away their cords from us. He who sits in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall hold them in derision. Then he shall speak to them in his wrath and distress them, in his deep displeasure. Yet I have set my king on my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. The Lord has said to me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will give you the nations for your inheritance, at the ends of the earth for your possessions. You shall break them with a rod of iron. You shall dash them to pieces like a potter's vessel. Now therefore be wise, O kings, be instructed, you judges of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry and you perish in the way. When his wrath is kindled but a little, blessed are those who put their trust in him. Okay? We have this blessed man and we have the ungodly man in chapter 1. In chapter 2, we have the raging nations who set their own king. The raging nations who set their own king. And then on the other hand, we have the nation who God has set their king. And then we see a description of the coming Messiah. We see Jesus here in this second half of chapter 2, and we see the nation of Israel separated and set apart. So while chapter 1 talked about the two different types of people, chapter 2 speaks about two nations, the world and Israel. Okay, the world and Israel. This last verse gives us some more clear insight. It says, blessed are those who put their trust in him. So who are those? Who are those that put their trust in him? That's Israel. At this point, that's Israel. So That's just a really brief look at chapter 1 and chapter 2. So these two chapters offer two paths to hold to. First, to be blessed, we hold to the law of the Lord and we love it. And then we hold to the future promise of the messianic king that God will set above the nation. This is who the readers of the book are to strive to be. This is the effort that they need to put forth. And as we move forward from here, like I said, we're going to see a lot of history about Israel. And what do we know about the history of Israel? It's a tainted history. It's a tainted past. There are times of blessing. There are times of cursing. There are times in which they've been faithful. There are times in which they have walked away from the Lord. So, as this book of the Psalms, these 5 books are opened to Israel, they're also opened to us. Okay. Like I said before, these books were compiled around 500 to 400 BC. What do we know that we've already studied that happens in that time frame? We've spent months talking about the exile, right? That's when the Psalms was compiled. So coming out of exile, what did the compilers, I don't know who compiled this book. We know there are many writers, but what are they looking to do? The same thing that the last bit of folks that we were looking at back in the previous books that we just came out of, when the prophets came in, what did they do? What did Ezra do? He pointed back at the law of the Lord. He studies the law, and he pointed out the failures. That's what the book of Psalms is going to do too. As they're coming out of exile, we have all these Psalms that we're going to get into very soon that point back. Specifically with David, we're going to go through some of David's lament. We're going to go through some of David's joy. We're going to see what happens to his heart when he has to deal with Absalom, his son. We're going to see how he feels about God. We're going to see all these things, and God described in many, many different ways. So when the readers of Psalms coming out of exile, they go to the temple and they can hear these things, it's a remembrance. Be the blessed man. Be the world. So what's the message to us 2,500 years later? What can we take from chapter 1 and chapter 2? Be that tree planted by the river. Be the blessed man. God closes chapter 2 by saying, blessed are those who put their trust in him. What can we as New Testament Christians draw from that? You want to be blessed? Put your trust in the Lord. That's it. Doesn't matter what's going on in your life. Doesn't matter how good or bad things are. Where is the true blessing found? In the Lord. In the Lord. So next time, we're going to, like I said, we're going to get into book number 1. That was the introduction. And we're going to look at the book of Psalms, just the book 1, and that's chapter 3 through 41. And those will all be the Psalms of David. And that will be 3 Wednesdays from now, which is why I wanted to do an introduction and not dig in deep, because I don't want you guys to forget some of the important stuff. Not that this is unimportant, but this is just kind of a tiptoe into the shallow end. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns? Miss Judy, would you close us in prayer?